just to give me a sense of whom I'm speaking to, how many people here are familiar with either the website or the book Cool Tools? Okay, so most of you aren't, which is good because I get to have the joy of explaining what this thing is. I want to divide what I'm going to talk about in three quick parts. One is about what tools are in general and the importance that tools have had in history. And secondly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, what's inside the book of the cool tools that I've made. And this is the book right here. It's this huge, heavy 5-pound thing, which I self-published. And that's going to be the last part, which I'm talking about how I made this book, which became an Amazon bestseller. So that's briefly what I want to talk about. The important thing, I think, is that tools are really the cause and the engine of most of the revolutions in culture and in science as well. Freeman Dyson, the great physicist, talked about how most of the revolutions in science came about because of someone inventing a new tool, like a hammer was a tool, of course, but even more so if you think about, say, the lens. A glass lens at first doesn't seem to be very important, but in fact, it was the foundation of a tool like a microscope, and that's the Leeuwenhoek original microscope. That's how big it was. It was a very tiny little thing. And all the world that opened up, the world of microbes and biology at the small scale, that in fact are probably the reason why most of us are here today is because of the discovery of the germ theory, understanding what really caused disease, that it wasn't really morals, it wasn't your behavior, it was actually something smaller than that, a little bit of a germ, which we could see with this tool of a glass lens, and that opened up an entire world. And we can take the same kind of a glass lens and we can turn it onto the heavens, and through astronomy, we discovered basically the world of physics. A lot of what we understand about physics came through our ability to look into the sky with this glass lens. So these kind of tools open up an amazing worlds that, again, also breed new tools behind them. X-rays, being able to look into a human who was alive and dissecting a human to see how their interior worked. All the things that the X-rays brought, not just that, but understanding how, in fact, the sun works and gives us X-rays, stars work. There's innumerable things that came through the invention of this tool called the X-ray. There was new ways of seeing often lead to new ways of knowing. These are just some examples of tools that help us to see, but many tools also liberate us in many other ways. The steam engine, this is a patent model of a steam engine, which was a tool that just changed, it transferred and controlled heat. It allowed us to burn in a very regulated way and turn that heat into useful work. That was a revolutionary tool. And of course, the electric motor was an old tool, and then below it is the step motor, which is really important in maker world because it allows you to do a controlled movement with a tool like a step motor. So all of these things produce new understandings, and they also create new tools. One of my favorite examples of this, of bootstrapping one tool making another tool, is a guy named Gingrich who invented a process for making his own workshop by starting with a foundry. So he would melt scrap metal with a charcoal furnace, which was very simple to build by hand, and with that foundry he would cast parts for a lathe. And with that lathe he would make a drill press. And with the drill press he would make a milling machine. And so through a sequence of steps he actually made his own metal workshop from scrap metal that he was remelting. There was another example of that being done in World War II when the prisoners of war in a Japanese work camp actually stole enough little pieces to make a little tiny lathe, and they used that lathe hidden to generate the other tools in the workshop. And so that sense of tools bootstrapping into greater complexity and newer tools is one of the foundation that tools are based on, is that through tools we can make new tools And through those tools, we can make new ways of seeing and new ways of understanding. So that's the general background of tools and why I think they're important. But what I'm talking about in this book, which is a gathering of tools for today that individuals can use, began actually in the 60s with the do-it-yourself movement of a generation ago. And that was the hippies in San Francisco and around the country building their own things like a dome, a shelter here, and making their own homes, making their own, growing their own food, making their own beekeeping equipment. Whatever it was, there was a return to like, let's do it ourselves and see if we can do it better. Out of that spirit came this publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was subtitled Access to Tools. And if you hadn't seen the catalog, the final results of it were about this size, about this thick, about this weight, and they were filled with tools that you could buy to do something yourself, to do homeschooling, to make something that hadn't been made before. And among all the other things in this catalog, the pages which look like this, were something remarkable. Was actually was a personal computer, the first personal computer that was available, and it was basically a calculator. So it was very wide-ranging in what the kind of tools that it was including, and that sense of telling people that they could do something themselves was something that I read as a high school student, and it changed my life because I realized that the world was a lot bigger than I thought. The possibility space of what we could do was much bigger than I thought. And I became a subscriber to it. It was a periodical. And this Whole Earth Catalog was really what the web was today for the people back in several decades ago. It's really hard for people to understand now who have grown up with the web how difficult it was to find out how to make something or to find out where you could purchase some materials. Let's say you wanted to purchase some stainless steel of a certain thickness and a certain weight, or you wanted specialty plastic. Where would you even go if you didn't have the web? It was very, very hard. Or if you wanted to get some instructions about maybe how to butcher your own cow, where would you even begin to go? A local bookstore at that time would never have carried this kind of information. There was no web. Where do you go? The answer was you often went to the Whole Earth Catalog, which was in some senses the web done on newsprint. I eventually was so taken by the Whole Earth Catalog that I went to work for the catalog. And the way that this process worked, it was user-generated content. We didn't call it that, but that's what it was. All the readers of the magazine submitted suggestions about what they wanted to see in it. The editors, like myself, would do a binary decision. Either it was included or not. We didn't rewrite things. We just put them in straight so they had unique spelling. They had their own voice. It sounded like a blog in many ways. And that information went into this book, and then we printed it in a newsprint really cheap and sent it back to everybody. So in much as possible, it was the web before there was the web. And that sensibility continued, and the Whole Earth Catalog was a place, if you wanted to do something yourself, you went there and looked at it, and you could see what it could do. And the Whole Earth Catalog continued to print editions until the web came along. And then when the web came along, it was doing most of what the Whole Earth Catalog did. So, but there were still some parts of it, about 5% that it didn't do. And I continued the Whole Earth Catalog basically as a website called Cool Tools, which was running reader reviews of only positive reviews of things that worked, of tools that people liked and thought they would share. So that's what this website was, and it ran for 10 years, and then I decided to, my 3 kids were growing up, and I wanted to give each of them a crate of tools that they would need when they left home. The coolest tools that I knew about. I wanted to put them into a plastic crate. And the problem was that I filled it up really fast, and I couldn't get everything in that I wanted to give to them. So I decided I would make a book of the cool tools, and I would put the book in. And the book would point to all the really cool tools that were not in the crate. So that was what I started to do. So my intention was to make 3 copies of this, one for each of my kids. And that's why I made the book. But I also it might be useful to others as well. And that's what we've done, is we've made this catalog of possibilities. And I want to emphasize what this is, because there's 1,500 different items in this. I'll show you what it looks like inside. There's a lot of stuff. And here's my criteria for what a cool tool is. It's anything useful that increases learning, empowers individuals, does work that matters, is either the best or the cheapest, or the only thing that works. And so that's pretty big, but what we're looking at is we don't do negative reviews. We don't say why things don't work. We only talk about positive things that work. Why life is too short. Why dwell in the negative? And so this is what it looks like. And you'll notice it looks very much like the old Haworth catalogs because it just ripped off the entire style. But here are some example pages. It's pretty broad. This is some sewing stuff, knitting tools, the best sewing scissors. Here's stuff on beekeeping and raising goats, say. Here's an extractor for bees, basket. So it's very broad. It's not just hand tools. It's not just things that you use in your garage. It's all kinds of things. And this is maps, some of the best maps, where to get great maps around the world, not just Google Maps. The point of this is that these are opportunities. You don't have to buy all this stuff. I'm not suggesting that our lives are already filled with a lot of stuff. Your garage is probably filled with a lot of stuff. You don't need to necessarily buy anything new. What I'm suggesting is that these are opportunities that you should know about. You don't have to buy these tools. You should just know that they exist. You should know that those possibilities are possible. And that is what's empowering. So I want to just kind of go through a couple of, say, some of my 10 suggested tools that maybe makers should know about. Well, first of all, and these are all in the book. These are all on the website. The website is free. Anybody can use it. Everything in this book is on the website. But I'll tell you about why the book is better. However, this is one of the things, if you want to learn more about it, it's McMaster-Carr. If you guys don't know about McMaster-Carr, you should, because they have it's like the world's biggest hardware store. They have a really great interface. And in the Bay Area especially, basically you have overnight delivery. I mean, the next day you have your stuff, whatever it is. The most obscure nut, the most obscure thread, pieces of material, whatever it is, they've got it, and you can have it the next day, and it's very reasonable. So that is it's like having your hardware store next door to your house. The Wire Cutter is another great website for gadget kind of stuff. And they spend 20 to 30 hours researching every recommendation they do, which is actually and honestly more than we do at Cool Tools. They have a narrower range of stuff that they're recommending. When I'm looking at something that's sort of at the level of a consumer item, I often would go to the Wire Cutter first to see what they recommend. So I just recently needed to go onto a large camping trip, and they had, what's the best cooler, okay, as a tool. You want to keep things cold, you're a fisherman, or your freezer, the power goes off, and you want to move stuff into a cooler while the power's off. What do you use? And so they have one that's, it's a 5-day cooler. It guarantees for 5 days. They did all the reviews of that. That's what this site is really great for. It's the best consumer product, one much better than Consumer Reports, much better than anything else out there. Another great tool from the Cool Tools site is Stanley Organizer, which doesn't seem to be so fantastic, but what's really great about this tool organizer is all those little bins can be rearranged, and you can have bigger or smaller ones. And they fill up the inside completely, so you can turn it upside down or whatever, and nothing will move. And here's the cool thing: is you can take those bins out. So you have your little tray in your tray bin, and you can take those little tiny cubes, dividers, onto your place where you're working, and then you can put it back. So you don't have to take out the whole tray. And they also they slide in on stack. So that's a really cool tool. If you have a lot of small parts, it's an ideal way to organize small parts. This is the Griphoist, which is not a come-along. It's something different. It came from Norway. Not very many people know about it. This is a larger version. But what it is a continuous, it's like a come-along that doesn't have ratchets because it's continuous. There's actually inside are two little hands that pull this rope. And the rope can be of any length. And you're pulling it, And because of the lever, you can actually move something of several tons to several millimeters degrees of precision. And you can't do that with a come along, you can't do that with a winch. You can do that with this. So if you have to move anything heavy, this is a thing that you want to use, and very few people know about them. They're very strong, they're very accurate, it's all hand-powered, very precise, and it's unlimited in terms of how long you can move something. Zip kicker. Okay, this is kind of a small thing, but what this is an accelerant for super glue, like the super glues that you use. If you add this, it dries instantly, and this is really cool because often you're building something, like say you're making models or something else, and you don't want to wait around for, even instant glue doesn't seem to be that instant. This makes it instant. So this is a special effects insider tool that the people who create models use when they're making them very fast. You can really go fast when you use this thing, which is just you add over you instant glue something and you add this on top and it just instantly is dry, so you can move very fast. This is the angle hot knife, which is used for cutting materials of all sorts, like if you're making kites or sailplanes or tents or anything you're using with a fabric, rather than trying to cut it with a knife or scissors, you use these hot knives, which is basically you're just cutting right through it, like you're melting through it just about, particularly synthetics. And people who are making pneumatics, anything where you have a lot of fabric, particularly of synthetic variety, this is a tool you'll find on their workshop. This is one that actually I think I first saw at a Maker Faire many, many years ago. This is the Brock microscope. It's almost indestructible. It uses a little fiber optic thing at the bottom for the light. It's a single tube. You focus by moving, you can just twist the whole tube, and it focuses. It's nearly indestructible. I mean, people with kindergartners, I've seen people take it out on sailboats where there's salt water. The objectives give you the power. You can change those and have higher power. But it's the telescope that we put on our kitchen table and the kids use. It's a telescope that I have in my workshop because you can't really hurt it, and it's pretty effective. So that is the indestructible microscope. This is another example. I'll just give you a sense of the broadness that we're covering is a Nemo tent, which is the lightest one-person tent that we have found, and it sets up in about 3.5 minutes, and it packs down to something that is it's about this big. And so I forget how many ounces it's barely a pound and a half or something. So it's the perfect backpacking, and it has a fly. It doesn't show with the fly. It's the ultimate high-tech, using a lot of pretty standard kind of technologies for the feet and the hinges and the carbon fiber poles, but it is really a technological marvel. And then lastly, people who are making things should really know about Kickstarter if you haven't, because it's not just about doing things that where you're trying to start a business. Kickstarter actually started off with people just trying to get funding to help them do a project, and they had supporters who wanted them to do it, whether it was for sale or not. In fact, originally, these weren't for sale. And so if you're trying to do something and you have friends or families or others who may be interested in supporting you, think about Kickstarter. And of course, if you are trying to scale up, it's the ideal way to do it. And not just Kickstarter, there's almost 100 other different platforms for crowdsource funding. But this is a huge thing in the world of making things, because the financial side of it is also becoming decentralized. Eventually, we'll have crowdsourced equity, which is another level. But I think even if you're doing something small, even artisanal, consider Kickstarter, become familiar with it. And I think one of the best ways I found to understand how Kickstarter works is to support others' projects, to see how they're doing and to understand the dynamics of what it works. So I think this is one of the great cool tools. And the last one is tool rentals. You can rent almost any tool that you can think of somewhere. I think a great way to have a tool is to rent it as much as possible. Find a place to rent it. You can learn what kind of a tool you want so that later on you'll be more informed about the one that you want. Renting tools, particularly of something you may not ever need to do again, like you're going to cut some tile, you can rent a wet saw, you want to drill some fence posts, you rent an auger. It's a fantastic tool itself. It's a meta tool. So renting tools cannot be overstated. So again, I want to emphasize that every tool is an opportunity, and that you don't need to buy them. You just want to know about them and to explore them as far as you can. To keep in mind that they're available, and to provoke, in some senses, what you could do. So you're going through this website or a book, looking at things, you say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I could explore underwater, or that I could make something that was, I could get an MBA on myself, or I didn't know that, here's a list of things, I didn't know that I could, in some ways, put solar on top of my camper, or I didn't know that I could rent a bulldozer, but you can, and that's what this book is really about. So, last thing I want to talk about is how I made the book. So I used a lot of the tools in the book to make the book. So this is some of the productions. Making a book, a physical book, is so different than making an e-book. Yeah, anybody, you can make an e-book, you can sell e-books. If you sell one or 1,000, it doesn't matter. But when you make a physical book, it's really very different. And so one of the things I learned about this is a huge thing. It's user-generated content, just like the Whole Earth Catalog was. People wrote in, told us what they loved. We published it. The design of it and the proofing of it, I used some tools that actually are mentioned in the book. So let me see. Well, that's me working at my stand-up desk. Let's see here. Okay, Elance. I'm a big believer in Elance. Elance is like the big eBay for freelancers. So if you're a freelancer, you want to get on Elance, and if you are trying to get something done, oftentimes you can get really good people working at reasonable rates, but most importantly, they can be very quick about it. You specify what you want done, you put it out, people make bids saying, here's how much I will do it for. You can choose what the price is. All right, so you don't have to decide, you don't know how much it's going to cost you. Well, you put it out to Elance, they'll tell you how much it will cost, and that was how we designed the pages of this book and proofed the book, which was decentralized. So we went out to, we got about 100 designers respond. We took 8 of them, we gave them more work, and we kept getting more work to the ones who did the best, and we wound up with about 6 at the end, and they designed the book in 1 month. That's 470 pages. It was incredibly fast. They did really great work. We proofed the book in 48 hours using the same system of decentralizing, going out and getting help. So you can use Elancers for anything you can imagine. The point is that you don't have to always do everything yourself. You can actually hire people to help you in a very specific, targeted, task-oriented way. It can be very powerful. All right? You don't have to do everything yourself. That's one thing I learned, and it's very, very powerful. So here's another thing, design of covers, of whatever it was. We went to 99 Design, and they crowdsourced the design in kind of a contest way. So all these people are submitting designs to you, and you are responding, telling you which one you like, which one you don't, and they keep improving them, and that's a public conversation. So everybody's getting better, and the more you offer to pay for your design, the more people you'll have bid on it, basically. And they're bidding by doing preliminary sketches, rough designs. So it's very, very powerful. Here's an alternative cover that came up in this process of 99 Designs. That's another tool, and they can design whether it's a logo or anything you want. This idea of employing others in a very reasonable way is a very powerful tool. So I made this book. We used freelancers to help us do it. I wanted to print it in the U.S., but it was on the U.S. No, the printers in the U.S. said it was impossible to print something this big in color. I had to go overseas. I went overseas to a printer in Hong Kong, and they worked with me as an individual. But the real surprise that I had was when they called up after it was printed, and they said, do you have a loading dock at your warehouse? And, well, let me get back to you on that. Because I had a garage. And so printing books is a very different thing. Even if you're just trying to sell them on Amazon, you have to store them somewhere. You have to keep them dry, and you have to fulfill them. And so this process is more difficult with paper, but ebooks, of course, is the way to do it. The result of that was I made a deal. I signed up with a distributor called PGW who handled the book, and they are stored in their warehouse in Texas, and I have to pay a certain percent or a certain fee per book per year, but that is how physical books work. And the last thing I want to say about this is the reason why I printed on paper and not digital. I mean, after all, I'm from Wired, right? There should be an ebook. But paper does something that the web doesn't. There's 5% of what the web does that the paper does and the web can't do, which is that there is something magical about opening up this thing that's so huge, and there's something about the items on the page that unconsciously your brain arranges and connects together in a way that you're not even conscious of. And so you are actually fitting patterns, and you're making and assembling things that you don't get by looking at a website on your phone. It's a kind of an immersive experience, an associative buzz that you get by making connections between things on this very large piece of real estate. Maybe someday when screens are this big and you can hold them in front or unfold them like a newspaper, that'll be true. But right now, there's something about the quality of learning that you get on this open book that I replicated, and it was worth printing on paper. So that is how we did it, and it went on to, I think it came down as low as number 17 on Amazon, best-selling of all books. It was a great success. And out of all this, I got the 3 books for my kids, and that's all that made me happy. If anyone else finds it useful, it's on Amazon. I'd be happy to tell you more about it, but I'm at the end of my talk, and so I appreciate your attention. Thanks.